Hey guys, this is chapter 23, food consumption and food. So food security is where people have access to healthy, nutritious and affordable food at all times. Obviously there's different areas where there's like that take more calories than other countries. For example, Africa has a low calorie intake versus the United States, which has a higher calorie intake. Demand is increasing because of population growth and because of development. So as you develop, there's a higher quality of life. People want more food such as meat, fish, eggs, and therefore food demand is increasing. So causes of food deficit and surplus. Deficit is where you don't have enough. Surplus is when you have enough to meet the demands of the population. So causes of food deficit include the fact that of the higher climate, so climate change. Due to climate change, it's harder to grow crops, or if there's a hotter climate, less precipitation, all these things make it hard to grow crops and leads to food shortages and drought. Pests and disease are also some causes of food deficit because pests, they can spread disease easily, as well as the fact they can eat your crops directly. Others include technology. For example, if you don't have enough technology, like for irrigation or machinery, then it's harder to have your surplus of food. Conflict can also cause deficiency. This is because during conflict, some people might kill other people's crops or kill other people's livestock. So again, that plays a contribution, as well as poverty itself. You're continuously in the cycle, so you can't feed yourself. You're not nutritious enough or healthy enough to work. You can't earn enough. You can't feed yourself. So it's a continuous cycle, as well as water supply. If you don't have enough water supply, then you can't water your plants or crops. And a solution to this is water transfer schemes. Food insecurity impacts include rising food prices, so rising inflation, because there's a higher demand but low supply, so prices increase. Famine and undernourishment are also one, so malnutrition, lack of food. This means you can't grow your own. Again, the idea that there's less food. Conflict can be also caused because people don't have enough food, because it's a basic right and obviously people have to fight for it. Environmental impacts include the degrading of land and soil erosion because more intense farming, overgrazing, over cattle ranching or over cultivation can all lead to these factors. Irrigation is where large supply of water is used to grow your crops, and advantages of irrigation is the fact that you have a more higher yield. Disadvantages include the fact that it's not suitable for areas where there's water insecurity or water scarcity, because huge amounts of water are required, and reservoirs also need to be built to get that source, so therefore it can cause locusts to become displaced, as well as the huge environmental impacts. Aeroponics is growing your crops suspended in air, and it relies on the mist system, so that's a disadvantage, because if you don't spray it like continuously, then your crops will die at the same time. So that's disadvantages, as well as the fact that it requires maintenance. Another disadvantage is the fact that specialist knowledge is required for this scheme. The advantage is obviously it grows faster because the roots are exposed to oxygen, as well as the fact that little water is required, so it's suitable for areas where there is water scarcity. Hydroponics is growing water in nutrient-filled water baths, and they're they're growing in the water containers, and this is a good advantage because it allows food to be fresh when they reach a HIC or another country. It also prevents diseases. How they can spread easily via the water, but it allows less spread of diseases and the fresh crispiness, as well as the fact that they could be stacked upon each other, so again less space is required, similar with aeroponics. Disadvantage is specialist knowledge and huge amounts of water that are required, as well as the fact that if you're transporting it, that huge amount of water is being transported, that could be really expensive. Green revolution is the discovery of new pesticides, new seeds, new herbicides, new chemicals, and it involves the important role of biotechnology involving genetically modified plants and animals, drought and disease-resistant crops, allowing them to survive these harsh conditions of climate change. Appropriate technology is technology that the locals can use. It involves local materials, more sustainable. It's something that the locals can use and repair, for example, drip irrigation. So, what is sustainable food production? So, sustainable food production involves, for example, permaculture. Permaculture is a general term for the production of food locally, organic food, seasonal food, urban farming initiatives, and eating sustainable meat and fish. It involves minimal impacts on the environment. Stuff that you can do to produce food sustainably is grow your own, so grow in allotments, in gardens. Eat seasonal, so don't eat out of season food, so it reduces the demand. Another thing you could do is obviously the urban farming, so the allotments and the gardens. You can also eat sustainable fish and meat. Sustainable fish, like eating a variety rather than one species, using either large net or small nets. It depends, because larger nets, obviously they trap the dolphins and the turtles, but also allow smaller fish to survive and reproduce, whereas the smaller nets only have the smaller fish. Sustainable meat, for example, allowing them to spread around, free range, allowing them to explore the green space. However, disadvantage to this is the fact that there's less biomass, because obviously energy is being reused via movement. But the advantage is that it's more humane nature, and there's less intense farming of the animals. And yeah, food waste. So food waste, stuff you can do to reduce food waste include eating in smaller portions, buying what you need. Supermarkets can carefully distinguish the differences between sell-by date and use-by date. And other stuff you can do is to make sure that you eat your food before the use-by date. How can food loss be reduced? The fact that better transportation, better communications, better preservation, better harvesting. This is for the LIC, so they could be educated. So that's all of the stuff that they can do, and that's all of food production done.